Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast, a place for artists to share their creative journey, discuss mental health, and the importance of building a positive community. I'm your host, Tyson Martin, and on this episode I have Betina La Plante, an independent portrait photographer who divides her time between Los Angeles, California, Europe, and Argentina. Betina has been published in numerous international fashion, editorial, and fine art publications, and we talk about what it was like to have Elliott Erwitt as a friend and mentor, working with celebrities, on her plans to pursue unit stills work, and why building a strong community in the artistic space is so important.
Hey, my name is Betina La Plante. I am Argentinian. I was born in Buenos Aires, lived there till I was 8. Then my mum married an Australian gentleman who became my father, or who I consider my father. And we moved from Argentina to Europe. They traveled a fair bit, so I went to boarding school at the age of 8. For me, it was a great experience. It was, I learned to be emotionally independent at a very young age, which is good and bad. Hard to go back home and accept authority from parents. But anyway, that's brought me to Europe, and I always wanted to be an actress growing up. So that was my goal. When I finished school, I did the rounds of drama school auditions. And while that year of auditions took place, I was enrolled in a foundation course in art. So a very generic art course, just to be doing something while I was doing the whole drama school process. The schools that I wanted to go to, I always got to the last hurdle and ended up not getting accepted in the school I really wanted to go to. I got accepted in one of the schools, but as a teacher training course, and in my very young, silly mind, I didn't think that was worthy of a place for me. So I took off to Italy, to Rome, and I did my drama school in Italy. So I lived there for 5 years solidly while I did the course, and then after 2 years deciding to try and go into acting and realizing that it was really not a glamorous business at all. Certainly not for me. I found I really didn't have that competitive element that you really need. It's kind of a cutthroat business. It's also, at the time, this was in the 80s, Italy was still very much male, macho dominated culture, and I just didn't enjoy that aspect of it. So I went back to England. I got a job in commodities broking.
That doesn't sound fun.
I know, I lasted 4 months. And 4 months and this was through my stepfather, who had a friend, and I was just like looking for any job at that point, just because I'd decided I wasn't going to do acting. But commodities was really like an extreme, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't creative, and I was miserable. So I thought, well, I still loved acting. I still loved theatre and the arts. So I thought, what can I do that brings me closer without being in front? So I got a job in television and film production. I became a script editor, so I was working on developing scripts and that aspect of things. But it also took me on sets. I loved set life. I loved being around that. And I did that until I met my then future husband, who is American. And we moved to America, so I quit work, started a family, and by default got into renovating property, because we always found these lovely properties that needed work, and it was a creative outlet while being able to stay at home with the kids. So it gave me a creative outlet. And during all this time, I always had a camera. It was a passion of mine, which I kind of had from my teens dabbled a little bit at art college, literally for a day or two, but fell in love with the darkroom and taught myself really badly how to develop film and make prints, and the whole magic process of seeing that from a film camera has no back. You don't see what you're doing, so you kind of have to teach yourself to expose and know the basics. And I used very much the basics. And then into the darkroom, where you, by chemical processes, magically developed these images. And it was a real bug and a passion, and I loved it. But I never thought it would become something that I would do professionally or even get more involved in. It was really a hobby. Sorry, that was a very long-winded
No, that was fantastic. It's exactly what this is all about. It's about, I want to hear your story. I want people to hear your story. And all those parts are very important to your story. I look at your work, especially your portrait work and your flowers. Those two things that you post really speak to me. In your portrait work, there is something about the way you capture people. It just draws you in.
Thank you.
Maybe explain some of your process. We talked a little bit in the beginning, but let's maybe fill some people in that will think that you magically light everything to make it look the way it does.
How I got into portraiture was kind of by, I wouldn't say coincidence, but my previous husband's best friend is an actor called Terence Stamp. And he used to come and visit us quite often. He's also my oldest son's godfather. And I never ever thought about taking his portrait. He was just part of the family. But I was also great friends with Elliott Erwitt when I lived back east, and had the privilege not only
just
of
somebody
having...
amazing. Just throw that out there. Yes. Oh, I was just friends with Elliott Erwitt.
What a privilege to have met him, and even more so to really have considered him a friend. He and his then wife Pia, I met through other friends who lived in the Hamptons, and we just hit it off, all of us. And he lives in New York and would come for the weekends. And, I wouldn't say every weekend, but it was a regular thing that we got together for Saturday evenings for dinner. His wife Pia loved entertaining, and, he did too. And it was just wonderful. We had a wonderful friendship. And also, he was just a wonderful, inclusive, and he encouraged people to do what they wanted to do. He talk about community over competition. He was always encouraging, said, you should take more pictures if that's what you like to do. And whenever he had a local shoot, he would invite his friends or try and get us involved. So I did have the privilege of working with him. My son paid for his college by one of the shoots he did with it for them. And it went to TV, and it paid him a lot of residuals, and that paid for his college. So anyway, Elliott was a big encourager of, just keep doing it, shoot, do what you want. I didn't do photography then while I lived in the Hamptons, but when I moved to California, I got a digital camera. The access was easy, it was cheaper. And that's when I had a session with Terence Stamp, and we just jokingly said, let's do a session. And it kind of started with him.
I'm going to cut in here real quick. That just shows, even though he was an actor, or he is an actor, use the people around you, and you can learn so much in a comfortable manner.
Absolutely. And also, I remember from various conversations with Elliott before I was even taking portraits, but he used to always say that one of his things was have the main source of light at 90 degrees. So coming in, you can fill with other stuff, but have your main source coming at a right angle. And when Terence and I had our little session, and it was kind of it wasn't a joke, but it was kind of like an impromptu thing. I had a living room at the time that had this big bay window. So he was sitting in a chair with the bay window to his, so I'm really bad, I'm so dyslexic, to his right. And I just put a black sheet behind him, and he's an actor. He's very, very, very comfortable in front of a camera. And and then he was writing a book at the time, and he wanted a picture for the book. I think that's what started the first session. And I loved doing it. I loved working with someone, with actually, not just taking photographs of houses. For a while, I was working with a location company in the Hamptons, and I was taking pictures of all the locations just as a way of shooting. I did a few weddings, which I did 5 total, and I think I hated each one more than one before, to when I said no more, because it takes the joy out of shooting for me. And some people are brilliant and love it. I stress and, there's no do-overs. So I much prefer working one-on-one, where I can have a relationship with the subject and, develop from that connection.
And that's so important. A connection it really aids the comfort of the whole scenario. You have already an actor or a professional model is already comfortable in front of the camera, but that doesn't mean that the person shooting the photos is comfortable. Even if you know the people, you have a lot of fears. Myself, I'm super hypercritical of everything I do. So I can see when you're talking about the people that you've worked with that made you comfortable, your demeanor changes, your eyes light up, the things that you've got to experience is something that everybody needs to understand, that we start somewhere, we get an opportunity, we take it, and it will help us move forward. We were going to talk about that you use natural light. And one question I had is, do you use a reflector? Do you use anything to bounce light? So this is just something you can explain as you do it. But for me, I'm just curious because, as I said, after talking to Ryan, I'm so fascinated with lighting because I don't understand it. So that's one thing. And now it's going to be my ADHD brain is going to be all straight lighting. I'm going to try to light everything I shoot. I'm shooting a doorway, lights everywhere.
Well, lighting, I think in the beginning I want to say lucky, because I didn't shoot with a reflector. I didn't have anything but the light source. So hence why quite a lot of, and I still like that source, is very much sort of lit on one side and more shadows on the other side. I think as you progress or move on, you start realizing that you don't always want that sort of half and half look. And so moving the subject around lights, or what I did was move the subject around the light source and have more light in straight on. But I very seldom use a reflector. I did a shoot with Maggie Sith in New York, and I had to use a reflector on that one. I didn't love the big catch lights in her eyes from the reflector, but it was just a really weird day. It was very overcast, which usually is wonderful light, but for some reason there wasn't enough light bouncing up on her face. So I did use a reflector. And for my birthday last year, and I still haven't learned, but I want to, I got a set of lights, and they're continuous LED lights. And I want to start learning how to make the light that I want and not always rely on what's available. Because once the light goes, you kind of have to end the shoot.
You should reach out to Ryan HK. He is a man of knowledge when it comes to lighting.
Where's he based?
Calgary, Alberta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his portrait work is.
I'll have to look. I don't know if I follow him. I'm definitely going to. I've made a note. But definitely I want to look at. And I learn by seeing. So for me, watching YouTube is fine, but I love actually physically seeing people work. So for me, it would be just wonderful to do a workshop or do something, because I absorb so much more from the physical connection of being there.
I do as well. So
Okay, well,
Ryan should be next week. You can hear his excitement and his passion for what he does. He's got a
yeah.
great story, so I won't ruin it for you, but
I,
he's
I, I
got a
look, I
good
look, I,
story.
I look forward to it, and I think the lighting thing is it's kind of fundamental to know how to make it work for you, and I feel that a very big hole in my ability to shoot portraits or anything really without being manipulate artificial light or not having the confidence to do it because I don't really understand it.
Yeah, confidence is a big thing. I mean, they're going to hear your story. They're going to look at your website. They're going to see some of the names of the people you've worked with, and they'll be like, how is she not confident? Because your work is spectacular. But that shows all of us, that's what's so beautiful about community over competition is we can all show what we've done. We can all help each other grow. And we can be vulnerable. We can be like, you know what? Even though I've done
Yeah.
this, and this, I'm still scared. I still question myself. It's just having the ability to know once I put my focus on it, I can achieve it.
Yeah, and you don't know how much I was sweating it before you came on.
Well, I've been told I'm very easy to talk to, so
you are, but it's just illustrating that I think for me it's always the anticipation that I have to work through the anticipation. And once I'm there, once I'm with the subject, the people, whoever you're working with, it changes. There's a shift, but it's always the anticipation that I get kind of a little nervous about.
Well, I like to make it as easy as possible on everybody.
And you do.
I love hearing stories.
Yeah.
For me, my creativity has always been a skateboard. From the time I was 8 years old, when I found my first banana board in an alley, thrown in a garbage can, learning how to go down a hill on it, to the moment I quit all competitive sports and focused all of my energy on skateboarding. It paid off a bit. I didn't make it to where I wanted to be, but that was my creative outlet. And It took a long time after that. After I quit that, I raised kids. I was hurt all the time because my body is in pain all the time. And I needed to find another creative outlet. And that's where photography came in for me. My daughter is a very talented photographer. She is, I guess you can say, a trained photographer. She has her degree. And I think when she puts her mind to it and finally decides to step out of her comfort zone and show people her fashion work, that she will be on her way to making a career out of what she loves.
That's fantastic.
Another question I like to touch on. I've got lots for you because you've worked with some of my favorite people in the world, and I just really kind of want to know what they're like. I mean, you've worked with Doc. Like, come on.
I know. And
he must be amazing.
Such a lovely man. So quiet. I mean, he's larger than life on screen, but he's just a gentle, kind, lovely person. And, the thing about working with someone who is so well known, again, the anticipation, you just don't know. You already build them up as being, they are larger than life in your head. So you always think, how are you going to measure up? I've been really fortunate in that the people that you've seen that I photographed, I think bar none, they've all been really lovely. But he in particular was just such a lovely, lovely soul. And he came about through a friend of mine in Santa Barbara who knows Christopher's wife, said, oh, if he wants some pictures, and they weren't for a magazine or anything, he just wanted to have some photographs done. So she contacted me, we had lunch in Ojai, and then I didn't hear from them forever, for months. And I thought, well, I thought it went well. And, commitments and work. A few months later, the wife calls me and says, let's set up the shoot. So they came to my house. I was living in Ojai at the time. And they brought wardrobe and we shot in my garage.
Wow. And for those who don't know who we are talking about, shame on you. We're talking about Dr. Emmett Brown, the wonderful Christopher Lloyd. I love his work and I love the photos that you did.
He's wonderful. When we had lunch, I said, oh my God, I'm so excited because you were in one of my favorite films. And there wasn't an eye roll, but he kind of looked at me and he went, Back to the Future, huh? And I went, no, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And he went, oh, like it completely took him by surprise that I might have associated with him with something much earlier on in his career. He's a wonderful actor as well.
He is. He's extremely talented. I'm sure he gets Dr. Brown all the time.
Oh, all the time. I mean, that's kind of like, it's iconic.
It is. He made that role his own. I've been telling all my guests on the Life of Phys podcast, people that I'm inviting on are people that inspire me. I like people like yourself. I like people who are humble. They've worked with some amazingly talented people, but they're willing to just speak and let me hear their story, and they want to share their story and their love to build a community. The competition in the photography industry, it's kind of out of control. There's so many people that they want to talk down to someone. They want to question someone. And, in my opinion, how do you question somebody for their art? Art is individual. So what do you think about that? What kind of advice can you offer someone that's been critiqued because someone doesn't understand the work they created?
Well, I think that's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality of any art form. People always will have an opinion, and unfortunately, they're not quite often, they can be quite unkind with how they communicate that opinion. And it is subjective, someone loves, what I love may not be what you love, or may not be what somebody else loves. It's all very individual. And I think ultimately it just has to give the artist a sense of joy, of passion and accomplishment for themselves. It's very easy to compare yourself to someone who may not even do the kind of work that you do, or even if they do, they're just different. And comparison, I think, can be the biggest killer of creativity. So it's, talk about community over competition. Competition exists, but it shouldn't be to bring things down. It should only be to bring things up, encouragement and feel like positivity. Ideas are like children. They need to be nurtured. They need to be pushed up. I don't know, was it Kennedy that said, the rising tide will lift all boats? It's true. It's like just someone else's successes won't detract from yours either. So, it's all that kind of, there's room for everyone, and there's room for every type of art. Yeah.
There is competition, and there is a healthy form of competition. And a healthy form of competition is where you're in a group setting, you're working against a fellow photographer, they get the job, but they're like, hey, I got the job this time. Next time it'll be yours. Or, hey, man, I got the job here, but I had another job lined up I can't do now. You want to go do it? And that's a way to build each other up, instead of being like, man, I got all the jobs. You suck. Like, and that's an unfortunate way that society thinks is the appropriate reaction and the appropriate comment.
And I think jealousy or a certain, envy is probably in human nature, but it's how you deal with that. You don't have to be nasty. There's a way of tempering it down and acknowledging that maybe, you do wish it had been you. But it's also moving past that and going, next time, as you're saying, there will be a next time. And if everybody does help each other out, then there's room for everyone.
Exactly. The biggest thing is people need to remember is never quit. Never quit because of something somebody says. When we're at the peak of the plateau and we feel like everything's against us and we should quit, that's right before success hits. And that's the hardest time, is that last, the last two steps of the ladder.
But it's also, with criticism, as you said about, people's opinions and stuff, it's interesting that people, when you put something out there, a lot of people can tell you how wonderful it is, but it's the one voice that's negative that tends to stay with you. And that's why it's really important to just, mind what you put out there, because you never know what it is that's going to stick with someone and affect someone adversely. It's just a very dangerous, giving opinions without filter can be very non-productive.
Exactly. And that's why community over competition has become so important to me.
Yeah.
And the wonderful Mike of Legend, he's 100% on board, as are you. And I think we're growing. I think the community's starting to grow. I see the hashtag pop up quite often now, and it's neat
It's
to see.
on my hashtag. It is the second one, only
Nice.
because I use also photographers of threads quite a lot. But
Yeah.
it always comes up. It's there.
And that's great. I don't know where I saw it one day and I was like, that's perfect. And
Yeah.
I just started running with it. And we've got a pretty good group now, and it's nice. You've been a photographer for quite some time. What inspires you to stay creative?
Being around other artists. I think that is talking about community over competition is actually the community that keeps me inspired. So that I have a lot of creative friends who, even if they may not be artists themselves, are involved in the arts. Very close friend is coming down this week. She used to work for Patagonia. She used to be a designer. She always knows what's going on, and I love going with people who have a different outlook on the arts than I might. I tend to concentrate on photography, and inspiration comes from everything. I love the cinema, having been part of it. I love theatre. I haven't been in a while, but that's what keeps me inspired, is constantly feeding it through different mediums.
I agree. I've actually started using and watching movies I never expected to really speak to me because of the cinematography, because of looking at color grading, because of looking how the angles they capture the dialogue at. And it works for me. It's something that I feel I can transition into my everyday approach to the craft of photography.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because you're constantly, sometimes it's easy, I speak for myself, for me, to approach things in similar ways. So, seeing other people's point of view gives you a fresh perspective. And so, I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. Or, wow, that's really interesting. That lighting is unbelievable. So it keeps your mind open rather than keeping you on a very sort of blinkered path.
Exactly. When you shoot the same thing with 10 other people, there's 10 different perspectives.
Exactly. So it's really nice watching that, because I think it helps keep your mind open to other possibilities, and you grow. You allow yourself to, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of, maybe I'll try something like that. So yeah, something spurs something else.
Yeah, it definitely takes away the stale feeling of you just hit a plateau and you've stayed there. You always can improve. You can always learn. And somebody might have just a slightly different perspective of that same shot. And you're like, I never thought of that. I've shot this thing 15 or 20 times and I've never thought of that.
I never thought of doing it that way. Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the whole thing. Let's talk about your camera setup.
Well, I'm a Nikon girl. I started with film and have always had Nikon. And then when I had a Minolta for a while, that was my first digital camera. I hated it. It was very, very early days in digital, and I didn't know in which direction to go. So I got that, but it didn't last very long. And then I think my next digital camera was the Nikon D5, which I promptly sold. Was it the D5 or the D4? One of the Ds, big, because it was just too much camera for me. I use a camera very basically. It's like I have the aperture, this, I know what I need out of it. I don't use all the bells and whistles that they are capable of nowadays. So anyway, I had this big, heavy camera, and so I traded it in for a D300 and a few lenses, and was happier with a slightly smaller camera. Then I got a D800. Then I got a D850, which I still have. I love.
My only complaint with Nikon. I've always said Nikon, but we'll call it Nikon.
Yeah, no, I know.
Is I always felt like it was just too clinical, if that makes sense. The images where I've always felt like the Nikon was a tool and I would take it when I needed that tool. It just didn't make me want to go walk around through the streets and shoot photos. It made me want to go out and shoot a landscape or things like that. And there's nothing against them. I mean, I love their cameras.
The D850 became my main tool. Then I bought a DF from a friend only because that was a thumbs down. Something. I bought a
probably my comments on Nikon.
I bought a DF from a friend who was selling it really cheap, who was getting rid of all it just because I liked the knobs, know, the old-fashioned look. And in fact, I still like that look. I love the twiddling rather than just doing it all by buttons. But then I've started working a little bit in doing film stills, and I needed a silent camera. Oh, again, a silent camera. So I got a Z7. Didn't love it. I found it really sluggish. The focus was just, something was off about that camera. I wanted to love it. It was mirrorless, so it was silent, but it just wasn't performing.
When you hit the image properly in the Z7, it was spectacular. But it took a lot of time to get that.
It didn't happen too often. So having said that, I now have a Z9 and a Z8, which I just got a few weeks ago, and I love those. Those are, I mean, the Z9 is a little bit, again, God, they make heavy cameras. And the Z8 is still a heavy camera. By the time you have the lenses and everything, and you're carrying two on a harness, by the end of the day, my shoulders are screaming. My biggest beef with the whole setup is how heavy they are.
Doing some unit stills. So what people don't, if you don't know what a unit still photographer is, it's the photographer that captures all the moments behind the scenes. Something that is very much where I want to head and what I want to do.
Behind the scenes, and also it's they're used for marketing. So you're kind of trying to capture what the cinematographer is capturing as well. So you're not only doing BTS, including everyone on set, but you're also trying to capture what is being captured by the camera, by the film camera.
That is a perfect explanation. Thank you. It's something that I don't know how I came across it. I think I watched a couple videos on YouTube about it, and it just seems like a lot of fun. You get to learn so much. That's where using the Nikon Z9, the Z8, amazing autofocus, the low light performance really comes in handy.
I
really looked at Nikon as well.
Oh, okay. Well, so thumbs up on that. But also, do you know what I love about unit stills and being a stills photographer? Because I love portraiture, and that is always going to be a kind of like my passion. But talk about community. You're on a set with so many creatives, all doing different things and jobs, and it's a real community. And every single person has a role in making this product, the film. It's such a wonderful, for me, it's not for everyone, set life, but it can be. If you love it, it can be absolutely fantastic. The hours are long. Sometimes, you're there from the very beginning to the end. Then you have to go back and you spend 2 hours downloading and uploading to whoever it is, the production. It's a lot of work, but the actual life, I love it.
Are you just uploading and they take those images and they do the edit, they put it out that way, or do you edit first and then upload for them?
Well, this is where it can get quite time consuming. It really depends who the production is. The job I did that enabled me to get into the International Cinematographers Guild was a Netflix production. So every company will have their requirements. They wanted that you upload all their raws, but you also, that they ask you to give you your select, and you go through your countless, you also learn not to shoot too many because you have to go through them all and select about 20 to 25 of what you think are your choices for the day. And of course, I want to present them as best as possible. So I submit the raw, but I will also submit my JPEG edit on the ones that I've chosen, just to give them an idea of why I chose those and how I see it. And it's very weird because I tend to always go for black and white. Shooting stills, you're definitely shooting in color, and you're providing them in color. So there is an aspect that, yes, you may want to do that. Some people don't even want to know, they just want you. And that's easier because you download and you just upload the whole thing. Some companies don't want you to cull the ice shot or the mistakes or anything. They want to see every single sequential image. Because the other thing that was hard at first to wrap my head around was that you don't own the images. On film sets, you are work for hire. So you get paid to shoot those images. Those images then belong to the production, not to the photographer. That's one thing that I wish were different. I don't know when it became that, because back in the day when Elliott was taking pictures on sets and, he did the Misfits with Marilyn Monroe, he owned all those pictures. All those photographers owned their images. You don't do that anymore. You don't own those images. So you have to ask permission to use them. You can only use the images that are approved for use. And so that's kind of an interesting aspect of it that I don't love. You sign NDAs, you do not, any photographs that are taken on set aren't allowed to be shown until A, they're approved, and B, they're released. So there is that lag as well. Yeah, it is a wonderful profession. And my partner is now in New Mexico. He's gearing up to start shooting. I think they start in April. So it's a big feature for Apple. NDAs all over the place. It's just, you can't talk about what you're doing. While they're in production, the film has a different name. So it's referred to by its code name. And so there are a lot of things that are wonderful about the job, but some things that are just like, oh God, I can't even talk about it.
Yeah. And it would be hard because, a lot of it's such incredible work. I was just looking, Josh Brolin released a Dune book where
I got it.
Did you get it? Nice.
Well, my partner worked, actually I did some mocap on Dune 1.
Oh, nice.
During COVID. So my husband was working. He's an AD and a producer, and he did the mocap here in LA during COVID. So all the stunt guys had masks and the whole thing for Dune 1.
My daughter would probably love to talk to him. That's what she wants to be.
Oh, okay. Well, he's currently in New Mexico, but as I said, absolutely, we'll stay in touch and we'll definitely connect.
Well, you're part of the inner circle now, so you're stuck with me. I'm a big fan. I think what was one of the photographers?
Chiabella.
Thank
Chiabella.
You. I ran into a video on YouTube of her and her father.
Yes, exactly. That's how she got into the business. Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah. I love that.
It's a wonderful business. And, that was also part of my wanting to get more into stills, is not only do I love set life, is that I would also love to not only travel with my partner, but also be able to apply for the jobs. There's no guarantees, but, at least I'd have the ability. So being in the local 600 in the guild is one step in, and it's a process. I'm not a spring chicken. It's a very much a young person's business. So, trying to break into a new genre at the age of 59.
We can beat
It's not,
that.
it's not, no, it's fine. It's not, I don't care. It's just becomes more of a challenge. It's not impossible. It's doable. It's just, you have more limited opportunities, I think.
I understand that for sure. Coming up on 50, I'm definitely not as fast and mobile as I used to be. I
Yeah.
feel everything now. So,
Well, but you've put your body through a lot.
yeah, but it was worth it. Everybody asked me,
Yeah.
it's hard. I can't work out anymore. I can't because my joints just don't function. And people always ask me, would you change it? And I wouldn't, because it
No.
taught me how to never quit. And that's
Yeah.
something that I use every single day. Every time I have a struggle, I won't quit. Nothing will break me. It just comes along with
And
helping myself be really who I want to be, and learning to believe in myself again. That's
do you
been the big
think,
one.
just curious, do you think that the competition of the sport helped you to never quit, or just wanting to get better, or what was it that made you want to keep going? Just curious.
Look at this. The interview has switched sides now.
Well,
Do you want to know the truth on why skateboarding became so important to me?
yes.
So my father was very competitive. I played very competitive sports growing up: baseball, football, hockey. He was that typical sport father. He yelled at me for
Oh,
everything I did, and hated skateboarding. Hated the fact that I loved riding a skateboard. So when I was 13, I started to progress really quickly skateboarding. I started to learn tricks really fast. And right before I turned 15, he did something, and it put me in this mindset like, you know what? F you, Dad. You tell me I have to play sports. I have to be a pro athlete. I have to do all this stuff, but it doesn't mean anything to me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ride a skateboard. I decided then and there that I would never play a competitive sport again. And my drive and desire with skateboarding was all personal. I hated going to competitions. I never did good. And I never did good because I didn't care about them. What I cared
right.
about was seeing my friends. What I cared about is seeing the newest trick, learning the newest trick, mastering that trick, and being able to move forward. I never cared about first, second, third, fourth, fifth place. None of it mattered. It was all about being self-motivated and having a will to slam myself into the concrete 25 times and roll away from it once. You learn to be strong. You learn that pain is temporary and glory is forever.
Yeah.
I had to throw that in there.
It's kind of true.
It really is. I mean, I love it still to this day. I watch skateboarding all the time. I have friends who are still professional skateboarders. Unfortunately for me, the most I can do is roll around a little bit. But I have those memories. I have those in my brain, and I will use that same drive and determination to be successful in this craft.
Good. Well, that's important.
When you're going to do a shoot, do you do a lot of research before you start, or do you kind of just get the person you're going to shoot the portraits of and then kind of go, oh, we're going to roll with it? Or do you plan out kind of a scene?
I never plan, or I never have too much of a plan in mind because I never know how they are going to be. I do a little bit of research if I don't know too much about the person, to just familiarize myself with where they're from, what it's for. If it's for a client, for a magazine or something, then they'll tell me what the kind of things that they want. And I always browse photography books. Irving Penn, I told you, is one of I tend to browse my books, and that's where it's not that I want to copy necessarily, but as I said, it's just opening to, oh, I hadn't thought about maybe doing something like that, or, oh, that's interesting. So I get inspiration just by reminding myself of things that I love, why I love Irving Penn so much, or it might be, oh, I want to do a Richard Avedon type white background, very contrasty.
His work is spectacular.
right?
My
For,
God.
for, for portraiture. I mean, and I tend to be quite the opposite. I tend to be dark background, dark, 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 but he's got that sort of brightness, and I want to do some more work like that, just lift it up a little bit. But anyway, so I do that kind of research, or that kind of looking at things for inspiration, just to get things going. But for the most part, when the person arrives, the shoot kind of takes on its own life form.
When you first meet the person, if you haven't worked with him in the past, you spend a few minutes getting to know each other.
I do. I'm not one of those people that likes jumping in. I mean, if we have the luxury of time, then definitely I actually want, they might feel, as you were saying, they might feel relaxed, but I want to feel relaxed. I want to just sort of breathe and think, okay, now that we're here face to face, everything's fine, So, but yes, I do like spending a bit of time just talking. And if it's not too formal a shoot, if it's just me and the person, then, I can go at my own pace. If it's more of there's outfits or a stylist or something, then while they're working, I have the time to talk.
That was one of the reasons why we do the 10 or 15 minutes before we start recording. Just allows not only myself, but allows, you to get comfortable with who I am.
I think it's very valid for me. Everyone has a different process. And sometimes you don't have that luxury. Especially if you're working with certain talent, they have limited amount of time. They come in and out. I've never had that. So I've been very fortunate. I know several photographers who have done big, big, big photo shoots, like for the New York Times magazines, for the Oscar contenders of certain years, and they have literally had 5 minutes with, I think that would probably make me panic.
We'd waste 4 minutes and 45 seconds panicking
exactly,
and 15 seconds of photos.
Exactly. But it would have been worth it.
100% it would. So, having Elliott Erwitt being more like a kind of a mentor to you, helping you move forward. When you shoot your photos, like his work's incredible. People out here in podcast land, if you don't know who he is, please look him up. His stuff is stunning. Do you ever feel like when you shoot in your black and white, it's kind of a tip of the hat to him?
I think the black and white comes more from when I was shooting film. I shot black and white film always. I never, ever bought color film. So for me, it's almost like a comfort. And also, any time that I spent in the darkroom was spent developing black and white. So it's a kind of like a comfort thing. I even have my little Ricoh camera, the viewfinder, set to monochrome. It's how I feel comfortable seeing the light and shade. Elliott loved black and white. I think a lot of photography in general, I would tip my hat to him because he was, as I said, so generous and always so encouraging and just, go for it, do this, and giving little tidbits. Like he was the one said, 90 degrees with your main light source. Also, a curious thing, but something that he said, if I have to explain a photograph, then I haven't accomplished, or it's not a great photograph if I have to talk about it. So when people, especially I know when you submit photographs, people say, oh, give us your statement about it, and I kind of think, but I don't want to talk about it. I want the photograph to say what it has to say. And it's interesting because I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's debate's the right word, that you should have a whole monologue that goes with a photograph. And I just am more of the Erwitt frame of mind, so that I'd rather not talk about it.
I think that having to have a full description of your image is a social media thing.
Yeah.
I see people who do, and I'm not going to knock it, it works for them, but they do these huge write-ups on their photos. I kind of go by that same school as you. If I put a photo up, let it speak to you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm going to give you a very brief, this is where this photo was. If you have a question, you can ask, but
Yeah, and just how it came about, like the circumstance and stuff, but I don't want to have to explain the image.
The
If you
composition and the
explain
capture. Yeah.
exactly, then something's not speaking or resonating.
Is it seeing my
Yes,
fingers? Is that why it's doing that? Hey,
that's so funny.
um,
You saw that too.
I did. I was like, what is going on? But I find when I shoot with a monochrome image on if it's a Ricoh on the LCD screen or in my GFX, I shoot monochrome. It really helps me set the light and shadow. It really helps me really capture, because I shoot a lot of stuff that's very moody. I like moody. I like really dramatic skies and old buildings, but I want you to kind of feel in that image like you feel the texture. But the monochrome really helps me see that. A lot of people think it's weird, but I do shoot raw, so I can make it color when I need to make it color. But just for my eyes, it really helps set the composition and the scene.
Yeah. For work, I have to shoot raw, but for myself, I will shoot raw and JPEG with the JPEG set to the monochrome. So if it's already looks good, I will ignore the raw and work from the JPEG.
That is the way I do it as well. Everything is set to raw plus JPEG, because you never know. Sometimes those JPEGs just come out just super crispy, and you just want to keep it. Yeah,
exactly. I think I was telling you that I have so much film in my fridge, and every time I open the fridge, I go, it's like telling me when. Is it all
current, or is it expired?
No, it's expired.
I love expired film.
I have so much of it, and I have a lot of Polaroid. I love Polaroid. Nice. So I just need to get it out again and start, playing.
And there's so much you can do. Old expired Polaroid, you'll get 2 or 3 out of 10 that will actually work.
My camera, I have a really old, beautiful Polaroid camera that has bellows.
The Polaroid land camera?
You tell me, because I'm so ignorant. I don't even know what it is, but it doesn't work really well. It's got so my aperture is broken. It only shoots at whatever it's at. So it's this one.
That's a land camera. I have one of those as well.
Okay, so that's
you have film for that?
I do. It's got film in there, and as you said, it's 1 or 2 will come out, and the others are just total duds.
Yeah, trying to find that film now is there's certain places that have expired boxes of it for like $300 or $400.
No.
I bought this land camera at the thrift store. It had never been shot, and I was all excited. I couldn't bring myself to spend $300+ on 10 exposures.
So there's my film.
Nice. Well, at least you use Fujifilm for something.
Yes. You see, I know what's good in some areas.
You have a sense of humor. That's fantastic. A lot of people get so serious about the gear they shoot, and they're like, I'm dedicated Sony shooter. Good for you, man. I shoot whenever I feel like.
I love my iPhone too. It's like always on me, like the Ricoh. And sometimes I forget to charge the batteries in the Ricoh. Mine's a really old one, by the way. It's probably the GR Digital
like the
3.
The first one.
So before the GR 1, 2, 3, it was the GR Digital. And so, I've had it since 2012 or something. It's old in digital terms, but it's great.
Well, I went backwards. I went from an XT5 to a GFX 50R. I shot my father-in-law's 90th birthday on Saturday. That camera, people say it's slow, people say this, but when you look at an image on the back of it on the LCD screen and you can see the depth in the image, it's a game changer, and I'm so happy to have it. It frustrated me a few times, though, let me tell you.
I bet.
But so do you have any current or future projects that you want to talk about?
Waiting to hear on film. The chances are very, very slim because it's a big film and I'm not that experienced. So I'm not holding out really for it. I mean, there's always a possibility. I just, I know and also after the writer's strike, everyone was paused, and now that things have picked up again, everyone's available. So you have all the really very experienced photographers available. So my chances,
big guns.
Yeah, so I'm not holding out for that, but that could be good. And otherwise, just working. I've got a few portrait shoots coming out. One with a young actor that I'm looking forward to, just because I also like working with young people coming into the business. They're always full of enthusiasm and they're open to do anything, and they bring lots of ideas. I'm not saying that any of the people I've photographed are jaded necessarily. It's just a different energy. This one comes in with almost an innocence, and got a couple of authors as well. I did a project during lockdown, and it's been an ongoing project, and it was totally, I've never even posted it to social media, and I keep thinking I should. But it was for a vineyard, and I did the photography for the website, and we came up with this concept of doing the story of the vines. So I shot the leaves, the vineyard leaves, in the very stages of the year. So it went on for a year and a half, and it was just unusual because I was doing portraits of leaves, but it was really interesting. It's something I've never done before, and then I had to go to YouTube University and learn how to shoot bottles, which it's always handy to have a resource. So I'm going to be shooting some more stuff for that, and also trying to sort out my digital files. I'm getting better now because I've spent the last 3-4 weeks trying to back up and catalog. It's a process. I'm still haven't quite wrapped my head around it, but I'm trying to at least get everything backed up and sorted. So while doing that, I've also been re-editing. I'm going to be printing a few things for a friend in Argentina who's asked me for work. Maybe a book, but that's kind of like that's a little seed that needs a bit of nurturing.
For sure. So getting into the mental health aspect, do you feel your creativity is a good outlet when you are not 100% feeling mentally there?
Yes, I think creativity is really important, but I find also what's important is physical movement. I'm not someone who works out per se. I don't like going to the gym. I used to swim a lot, and I love swimming because I find it almost like a meditation, just going up and down a pool. I don't find it boring. It was a way of just de-stressing. Being creative is wonderful because your mind gets taken over. My mind gets taken over by the possibility and things that giving birth to ideas is a very positive process. So absolutely, it's maybe just me. I don't tend to have very down moments. I'm not like hyper, but I do walk a lot. And I think just being out in nature, having the camera, doing little things for me. I mean, I'm shooting things all the time, even if I'm not posting them. It's just, I guess, being creative. I garden. I love growing things. Just anything that gives life to something, whether it's ideas, whether it's physical, fruit. I don't know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it takes many forms, but absolutely it's beneficial.
Based on the community over competition hashtag and kind of we'll call it a collective of people that have started to really come together on it. What advice can you give people who are new, who are just coming into the industry and they feel like everything's against them? So can you give them some words of wisdom, some words of advice?
Oh gosh,
putting you on
that's
the spot.
so hard. Social media is tough. I think it's tough. It's very hard not to compare yourself out there, because it's almost like attention grabbing, and one can get lost in what your truth is and what your passion is, because you're almost measuring yourself against someone else, and you think, oh, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. And it's social media. My account on Instagram was hacked about a year and a half ago, and I lost it for 5 months. And the first few days that it disappeared, I thought my life, not creatively, but my some form of connection with the world, it was over. And what was I going to do without it? But once the initial shock of losing the account, it didn't affect my creativity at all. It was just how I associated what work I was doing with getting the message out. So I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but it's just keeping true to your passion shouldn't be measured by what goes on social media.
By likes and follows.
Oh, well, certainly not by that. But, and Threads has been, for me, a phenomenal new social media platform where everyone, for the most part, is so giving and engaging. It's not Twitter. I hope it never becomes like it. It's just and it's very artist-centric in that there is such a huge community of people always willing to engage and discuss. And if you actually ask for advice without it being just for comments and likes, people actually are so generous with their talent, with their knowledge, I found it really inspiring, the community aspect. And that, I would say, is find a little area like Threads, whatever the equivalent is, where the community lifts you up and becomes that encouragement and little push.
I agree. Threads has been a refreshing feeling of social media.
Yeah.
I don't get along well with Instagram. I don't want to follow. I don't follow the rules, I guess people say. If I have 18 shots I like, I'm going to post all 18, not one a day. I'm too impatient for that. Where can everybody find you online? What are your social media handles?
I did recover my Instagram account. I don't post very often, but I think it's important to have a presence there. So that's Betina La Plante, all one word. Threads is linked to that, so it's the same. I've got a website which is in dire need of updating. I'm working on that. Talk about a project, that's another project. And Facebook, but I'm not active there. I try to balance. Threads is really now where I spend most of my time, just because the community is so wonderful.
I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, Tyson. Really, seriously, it's been wonderful. I'm surprised you wanted to speak to me, but I'm pretty honored that you did, and so happy to be part of this venture that you're doing. I think it's wonderful. I can't wait to hear more and hear other people's stories and what drives them.
I appreciate your work. I appreciate your connection to a community feel and building community over competition. And if you haven't checked out Betina's work, you need to look it up immediately. It is amazing.
Thank you.
She has a style that you will know it's her work as soon as it's posted.
Thank you. I look forward to following up at some level. I'm going to be listening to all your podcasts because the one I've heard was wonderful, and the people that you have lined up, I know, are going to be fantastic, and it's really inspiring to hear people's stories. So thank you.
That means a lot to me, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is let people who have a story share their story and let it inspire others in whichever way it does inspire them.
Thank you. And Tyson, it's mainly due to you because you really are good at making people feel comfortable. So thank you.
Thank you. Letting other people know the artists that inspire me to keep going and keep shooting. Not all of us have the ability to have friends like Elliott Erwitt. I'm just slightly jealous over here.
Sometimes you come across very special people, and I consider myself very, very lucky to have had him be part of my life.
Yeah, and I feel very, very fortunate to be able to call you a friend now.
Yes.
And I look forward to growing. Maybe one day if I make it down to LA or you make it to Vancouver, we can get together and we can go have a little photo session.
I would love that. I've been to Vancouver once for a weekend, loved it. I've been to Montreal this was with my partner's work. Loved it. I've been to Toronto for 2 days. I love Canada. So, it's any opportunity to go back, I would go back.
Perfect. I'm a big fan of Canada myself. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day.